And hello to you. Good afternoon. I'm Mitch McCoy. We're coming up on 2:30 here at KARK4 and Fox 16. We have a breaking news alert. We're just learning that Governor Asa Hutchinson has announced an 11 p.m. closing time for restaurants and bars that are licensed to sell and serve alcohol. Let's get straight to KARK4 and Fox 16 political anchor Jay Bird. Jay is standing by. Jay, is this a surprising move by the governor?
Maybe a little bit. It was hard to see what would actually come out of some of this winter task force. He was going to be starting to lean on them for recommendations that they were going to present. It's a little tough to say like that this one was even on the horizon because he has said in the past that he doesn't want to, I guess limit economic activity as much as he possibly can. I guess to really, for this one here, this is probably more of a weekend thing than it is maybe during the middle parts of the week or on weekdays. But yeah, maybe a little surprising, but I guess when you take a step back and kind of look at what the governor is trying to accomplish here, and it's basically those social gatherings. And a lot of times when, you have these businesses that sell alcohol, when are they busier? They're busier on Fridays and Saturdays. And I think this is just an interesting step that he's taking, maybe a little outside the box and not necessarily putting in a curfew per se, but it gives people less of a reason to be out and about and gathering. So it is definitely a little bit of an interesting step taken by the governor here.
So yeah, the Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson just announced within the last 10 or 15 minutes that this 11 p.m. closing time for businesses that are licensed to sell and serve alcohol. So long story short, if there's alcohol at one of these locations, they are now closing at 11 p.m. This goes into effect this Friday. If I have my date, so tomorrow it will go into effect November 20th. It will be in effect through January 3rd. Jay, this has a direct impact on a lot of different restaurants, including bars. We're also told that private clubs are also impacted by this new curfew that is being implemented, you could almost say effective immediately, but tomorrow.
Yeah, and kind of like I said, this is more of a weekend thing than it is during the middle parts of the week, or like I said, weekdays. So Sunday through Thursday, you're really not going to see a lot of change. A lot of these businesses you'll see across the board really close about 10 or 11 o'clock already as it is. Now the Friday and Saturday night is when you're going to start hearing the old Semisonic song, Closing Time, a little earlier than what maybe you did in the past. So again, it kind of goes to that whole limit the gathering without limiting economic activity as much as you possibly can. And I think, the governor thinking this is the right move to where it's, people can still be out. You're not further limiting restaurants in terms of capacity or anything like that, because he had even said earlier in the week that he didn't want to do that. The White House task force report that came out recently had even said, the recommendation there was restaurants should probably drop to 25% capacity. I asked the governor about that in his weekly update. He even said then that, it's a death knell for a lot of smaller restaurant businesses where they just don't have the space to be able to handle that. And I think this is kind of where that compromise might be. And we've seen him do this throughout this whole pandemic of trying to do his best anyways to balance out, the public health and the economy of Arkansas, because this is a state where it's smaller. There's just not as many ripe opportunities to just kickstart things right back up as you see in bigger states, Texas, California, New York, Florida, and the like. So I believe this is really a move that he thinks will limit people more so on the weekends, because even as we've gone through this pandemic, before the numbers really started shooting up recently, there was always that little bit of a Wednesday, Thursday spike in things, and that's kind of been attributed to over the weekend activities. So just one step, and I assume going forward we might see more steps like this where it's sort of minor changes of restrictions that were in place earlier on during the pandemic.
What do you think, the governor's, some of these ripple effects are going to be? I mean, there are some businesses that, specifically downtown Little Rock, that their primary focus is the nightlife. And at this point, the governor has said that they do contact tracing, and they have not seen a major spike in cases by the economic side of things. What do you think some of the pushback is going to be right now from some of these associations that directly contribute to some of the private clubs, the nightlife, bars that their primary source of income are people past 11 o'clock through maybe 2 a.m.?
Well, I can probably tell you right now, they're not going to like it. And then much like you said, is, the bar scene, what do you do when you go to a bar? You're there to socialize. You're there to gather. You can have a couple of drinks to go with it, but really the main thing is you're there to hang out. And this is one thing that the governor, Dr. Jose Romero, the Secretary of Health here in the state, have really been pushing here, especially as of late, when with the numbers as high as they are, is you've got to limit that as much as you possibly can. And it's a lot harder to do that within that bar setting, just because you can have sort of those areas where, okay, you can't sit here, but you can sit here. But in bars, it's just activity's a lot more free flowing. So as opposed to restaurants where you come in, you sit down, that's your spot for the most part. So I think you're going to see a little bit of I guess hurt feelings, if you will, from bars and some of the associations with those businesses. But really, at this point, it's kind of what can you do? And really, it's going to be interesting to see those effects going forward, kind of like you mentioned, when your business is basically a nocturnal business, what those businesses are going to look like, even when they come back to normal times, at least as of right now, come January, because even you get into the holiday season, a lot of people are going to be off more often. You tend to maybe go out a little bit more during the middle of the week, especially those last 2 weeks of December. A lot of people take time off. Kids are off from school. You tend to let your hair down a little more. But it is going to be interesting to see what happens with some of those businesses that are driven by gathering, like you said, bars, clubs, things like that. And with the shutdown being earlier in the evening, will we see some of those fold up? I think that's a very astute possibility. Will there be some that maybe could survive? Maybe some of that downtown Little Rock area, they could probably thrive a little bit. But it's going to be interesting to see how outside the box some of those establishments get, just to try to stay open and to keep attracting people into their business.
Well, if you're just joining us, I'm talking to Jay Burr. We're following breaking news. Governor Asa Hutchinson has just announced a few moments ago that all bars and restaurants that serve alcohol are going to have to start closing their doors at 11 p.m. This is a new directive that begins tomorrow. It will go through at least January 3rd, 2021. And the governor just announced this today, apparently a recommendation by the Winter COVID-19 Task Force. Jay, are you surprised that the governor is making some of these decisions so early on into this task force, or do you think that the pressure was mounting up?
I don't think it's not surprising that something is being done. I am a little surprised that, this is the direction. I would have thought, just myself, that limiting capacity a little more, maybe going back down to maybe half. But again, that's something that the governor said, he didn't really want to do any further of limiting who can get in, how many people can get into an establishment. So I think this is sort of the next best thing, if you will. And again, it kind of really does target those areas that promote just gathering and socializing, even at just regular chain restaurants. I mean, a lot of times those bar areas, you're just there to hang out. Now, there's also the restaurant part of things where people will, congregate as well. But in those settings, usually you're there, you have your dinner, you're out. Whereas in the bar area, people tend to mill about. So I think, while you said it's not surprising that he's already taking some kind of action, because we are starting to get into those winter months. And I think he did realize that a lot of people are going to have a lot more time on their hands, just because this is that time of year. Kids are going to be out in a lot of districts across the state all next week. There's still some that have those first couple of days, but then even getting into December, people tend to take more time off. Like I said, especially in those last couple of weeks around Christmas, around New Year's, and I think that was maybe your target of, okay, let's kind of cut down on Christmas parties and New Year's Eve parties, where you're going to have those mass gatherings and things like that. And so this is maybe just a way to be like, hey, I'm telling you guys now, so don't be disappointed if, the downtown area is not as jumping on New Year's Eve because everything shuts down at 11 when you've still got an hour for the ball to drop. So you got to figure something else out. And I can imagine, is hoping you're just at home with your, maybe small circle of friends at the very most, or just hanging out there by yourself watching the balls drop.
Jay, got to jump in here. We have more breaking news. The governor just announced the new COVID-19 numbers for today. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is a new record in daily cases, 2,238 total cases being reported in the last 24 hours. Hospitalizations are down 2. We have 3 more Arkansans on a ventilator right now. And I'm looking at the number of confirmed, the total number of deaths. That is an additional 22 deaths reported today. So if you're just joining us, folks, we're coming on with just another breaking news alert as we learn that 2,238 new cases of COVID-19 reported in Arkansas today. Jay, your reaction?
Well, I mean, it's kind of just following the pattern that we've seen. It was going to be interesting to see what these numbers still do, because there has been a lot of ebbing and flowing, and I know some of these, the testing days have kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit. Looking at the results here, full, 11,560 of the PCR tests. That's the ones that really confirm things. Over 2,000 antigen tests. That's more the rapid test. So the testing numbers are very, very robust. And the governor even said, even early on in this thing, when testing numbers start to go up, you're going to find more cases, and I think that's what he's going to attribute this. Now, even that's still over that 10% threshold. If you kind of go with what they've got here, I know sometimes they sort of shift the hours of the day to fit what a day is, but nonetheless, even just from the PCR tests alone, well over 10%. So that's definitely an alarming thing to see there. But, your active cases have been steadily climbing, for a long time there, even though some of the numbers from the daily were high. You get into those 600-700 range. Your recoveries were also dropping off about the same rate, but we're just not seeing that. So that active case number too, steadily climbing, now almost 13,000 right there, now over 2,100 deaths in here. It just is what it is right now. You're looking at the top counties. You've got 5 counties over 100 cases today. Pulaski hitting over 200. I believe that might be a high water mark for Pulaski County. But Washington County, Sebastian County, Benton, Craighead, I mean, these are just sort of the same areas. Now, obviously, these are some of your bigger urban areas as well. So it's bound to see the same counties up there. But the numbers just astronomical today. 207 for Pulaski. Washington County at 131, Sebastian 122, and 110 and 102 for Benton and Craighead County respectively. So, the community spread is wide, as the numbers say here. Over 1,500 cases from community spread, over just a little over 114 in the correctional institutions. So, the way things have been going, these numbers are not surprising. I think the one that does stick out, though, is that over 200 mark in Pulaski County. So it's widespread, and I guess to couple with this information that we're just now getting, to go with what the governor said today with closing bars and restaurants that serve alcohol, trying to limit the gathering and the socialization of people as much as he possibly can.
We just sent out an alert to people's mobile phones. I want to welcome those folks in on our live stream. If you're just joining us, good afternoon to you. I'm Mitch McCoy. I'm joined by political anchor Jay Burr. We're following breaking news right now. Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson has just announced a new closing time. You could call it a curfew if you want, on bars and restaurants selling alcohol at their facilities. It's an 11 p.m. curfew that's going to be taking effect tomorrow, Friday, and it will go through January 3rd, 2021. This was a recommendation set by the Winter COVID-19 Task Force. They recommended this to the governor. The governor taking this step by imposing this 11 p.m. curfew on businesses licensed to sell and serve alcohol on their premises and at their facility. While we were on the air, we got information on a new record number day of COVID-19 cases, Jay, 2,238. That is a record here in Arkansas. We know that the previous record, correct me if I'm wrong, was around 1,800, right?
I believe it was just over 2,000. I want to say it was about 2012 or something to that effect, but
okay.
Nonetheless, this one well above that record.
New record set. We have a new number of deaths also being reported today. We're learning about 22 additional deaths in the last 24 hours. One thing that stood out to me is that this curfew or this directive issued by the governor today, Jay, goes until January 3rd. It goes until early next year. Jay, why not set this out for every 30 days? And I guess you could say it's not that long off of 30 days, but why till January 3rd would be your guess?
Well, I earlier, I think you kind of get through the holiday season with this one. You know, you've got your Thanksgiving, and then you kind of get into the December month where, you know, you're going to have a lot of Christmas parties, whether they be office parties or just gatherings in general. People want to meet up, and especially on those weekends. And like I said earlier, and those for just joining in, you know, Sunday through Thursday may not see a whole lot of difference when it comes to this. A lot of businesses usually shut down about 10, 11 o'clock as it is, but really that Friday and Saturday is what will really hit when it comes to this directive right here. And you mentioned kind of the 30-day mark. You know, it kind of just gets us through Christmas, that holiday season, New Year's Eve. I mean, obviously, I think that's one of the big things that the governor was trying to limit as much as he possibly could, was people going out and about on New Year's Eve. And this gets us just past that to where maybe they can reevaluate some things. Because once you kind of get back into the new year, you know, the partying and gathering really kind of settle back down. Everybody's trying to get back in. But it will be interesting, though, to see if there's anything that will come of gym memberships and some of the indoor training facilities, if there'll be any new directives put out there on those facilities, considering, you know, the spikes we see every year with everybody putting in their New Year's resolutions. I'm going to hit the gym, I'm going to lose weight and all that. If there will be something actually put into place on those types of facilities, anything further than what's already being done.
So Jay, do you think that's being discussed right now? Do you think that's being discussed by the COVID-19 Winter Task Force?
I don't think anything is off the table, and you've got some. Oh, absolutely. It's something you're going to have to address going forward. And like I said, you know, this is just an annual rite of passage for just society, is, you know, and we have the numbers to back it up, where, you know, you see gym memberships, they spike heavily in that January, February month, and then, you know, everybody tends to fall off the wagon a little bit there. So I think this will be something that will probably get brought up in some form or fashion. Now, it may not be necessarily imposing more restrictions. They might limit, you know, everything that we've seen in the past. I don't know if they'll go back to, you know, limiting, you know, for the attendance in those gyms. You know, they've already got things spaced out 12 feet apart in some of those facilities, but I think there will be something involved there. And we're actually just getting an email here from our assignment editor. This is actually the number 2 day.
Number 2,
in terms
okay.
of COVID.
And I just saw that email as well.
Yeah, still a wild number, and, you know, you just see some of these numbers that have been tossed around. You think every day is about a record day, but yeah, I think everything that was imposed early on in this will at least be brought up in some form or fashion. And now, not to say that the governor is going to reimpose some of the restrictions that we had early on in this pandemic. You know, the restaurant capacity, for example. You know, they're instead of limiting capacity further, okay, we'll just shut it down a little earlier on a nightly basis. So, you know, and this task force too, the health folks that I've talked to over this entire pandemic have been they've had their eyes opened a little bit to other things that they have to balance out, because these are just health people. They worry about health, and all that kind of thing. But now, having worked through a lot of these things and having the governor's sort of input on a lot of things, they realize, and this is Dr. Greg Bledsoe, the Surgeon General who chairs the Winter Task Force, has even told me in the past, when it came to the athletics for high schools, it's like we have to look at things through other prisms other than our healthcare eyes. And so you have to sort of balance out the economy with what you want to try to do from a health standpoint, because this being a smaller state, a more rural state, like I said earlier, it's a lot harder to bounce back than it would be if this were a major urban population, such as your Florida's, California's, and Texas, and things like that.
All right, Jay Burr you can see him in the editing booth right there. He's getting ready for the newscasts that begin at 4. We'll have much more on this story as it happens. Jay Burr, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Yeah, anytime, brother.
All right. Thank you, and we will see you later in our newscast beginning at 4 p.m. If you're just joining us, we are following this breaking news. If you're just joining us, let's recap what we know right now. We know that Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson has just imposed an 11 p.m. curfew, or a closing time, for bars and restaurants selling alcohol at those locations. So beginning tomorrow, bars and restaurants with alcohol will be closing their doors at 11 p.m. That is a curfew that will be in effect until January 3rd, 2021. While we were on the air, the governor announced 2,238 COVID-19 cases in the state of Arkansas. That is the second highest number of cases reported in a 24-hour period. And that information coming from the managing editor at the assignment desk, because he is the one that keeps track of all these numbers as they come in. So that is what we know. We'll have much more on this breaking story coming up on your newscast. It begins first at 4 on KRK, and then, of course, KRK News at 5, and then Fox 16 News at 5:30 as well. We'll have more on this breaking story online at krk.com, fox16.com, and I invite you to download our mobile phone app. KRK and Fox 16 will send alerts to this story directly to your phone. For now, I'm Mitch McCoy. Have a good afternoon, and we'll see you at 4 p.m. on KRK.